Liminal space describes places that are between destinations. It derives from the Latin word limen, which means on the threshold. This definition is vague and can describe anything from an empty corridor to an open stretch of road. Recently, the concept of liminal space has gained a lot of attention online as a meme and is often used in relation to unsettling, familiar-looking places. Because liminal space can be defined as areas that are transitional, they might be seen as not overall important to a person's destination. Therefore, memories of these places, such as eerie utility rooms and empty back streets, are something that remains repressed in the memory and is then dragged up by looking at images like these, giving us that weird sense of déjà vu. I believe that liminal spaces are the antithesis of hyperreality. In Jean Baudrillard's 1981 treatise, Simulacra and Simulation, the philosopher explores the concept of hyperreality, a state in which the mind is unable to distinguish reality from a simulation. A contemporary example of hyperreality is social media, which allows people to create simulacra using cameras and screens. In my own example, I've selected a subject and then captured it using my smartphone's camera. I've then used an application like TikTok or Instagram to enhance the image using augmented reality. This can be anything from filters to stickers and text boxes. Using a camera to capture an image which is normally seen with the human eye is an act of abstraction in and of itself. The graphics which I've placed over my image create deeper layers of abstraction. I then upload this picture to social media, creating a simulacrum for my followers who receive it from their screens. I call this a simulation because I have manipulated the world around me to affect the emotions of the people viewing the end result. I held up my coffee cup in an unnatural way, I chose a good angle to capture an appealing background, and I then added a filter, emojis, and some text to incite feelings of comfort in the viewer. Photographing the same location at a different time of day as a serial vision gives a completely different atmosphere. It almost portrays a sense of ennui, like I've set the place up to be a more comfortable place than it is in real life. Countless examples of this sense of liminality can be found throughout the city. We have been given a rare opportunity to document and analyse architectural liminal spaces and their psychological impact. Britain's first national lockdown created new liminal spaces in places that are usually busy and populated, such as the Ousburn River. This winter, I believe a second national lockdown will produce multitudes more of these temporary liminal spaces due to the combination of quarantining and the regular seasonal drop-off in pedestrian volumes. In the field of architecture, we tend to create hyperrealities through the design of places. We are usually tasked with turning the image of a vacant piece of land into a simulated and lively place. In my own design work, I'm currently examining a recreational ground in Ballast Hills. This used to be one of the largest Protestant burial grounds in Newcastle upon Tyne. It was converted into a public park in the 1930s, with the intentions that it would be used for sports, children's play, and family activities. When I went to document the site myself, it wasn't long before I began to feel alone with my thoughts. At first, the sensation is unpleasant, and it causes me to ruminate on forgotten memories. After a time though, I began to relax and entered into a sort of meditative state in which I began to appreciate what I saw around me. It was autumn, so some of the plants were in bloom, while others were crispy and grey. There was a blackberry bush with ripe and juicy berries on one branch and brown rotten fruit on another. I noticed also that the path I was walking on had some kind of engravings. On closer inspection, I began to realise these were very old headstones from the original graveyard. The first one I read said James Sands, who died on January 31st, 1782, aged 49. The Ousburn Valley is a developing area of Newcastle upon Tyne, and its liminal spaces are characterised by graffiti, local industry, and remnants of the city's history, such as Ballast Hills Cemetery. As it is already the site of my design project, I would love to explore this area in more detail, in terms of interventions and how the liminality of spaces can be enhanced within these areas. As we become more and more isolated, we may feel ourselves drawn into virtual worlds. The sale of video games has indeed surged during the COVID-19 crisis, and I have been exploring the Source Engine as a potential medium for interactive architectural representation. I've also found that liminal spaces can be seen within these virtual worlds just like in real life. Online video games simulate activities like team sports, puzzles, and fighting in a virtual playground. The space in which these activities take place is typically called a map. In games such as those played in the Source Engine, these maps can be explored offline using a single-player mode or the developer tools. I've found that exploring empty maps after the virtual activity has ceased is quite an unnerving experience. While walking through an unpopulated game world, I would pick up on details that are usually obscured by the hyperreality of play. For example, I can explore the enemy team's base, and although I know there are no enemy players to shoot at me, I still feel a pang of instinctual anxiety, like there's someone hiding just around the corner. The colour coordination of each base corresponds to that team. Empty corridors, abandoned meeting rooms, and no trespassing signs reinforces the feeling that I'm somewhere that I'm not supposed to be. It also brings up that weird sense of déjà vu, perhaps because this is a game that I usually play with friends. And when those friends are absent from the game, it gives me a sense that something is missing and off. I find it very rare that a virtual simulation gives me the same or similar emotions to real life. There's usually some cognitive dissonance, especially in games that are so violent or fantastical that they bear no resemblance to our reality. It's very interesting then that these same unsettling emotions that I feel in real life liminal spaces is also felt in virtual liminal spaces. In the event that we are locked down for another 12 months, it might be difficult to justify constructing physical liminal spaces for the purposes of meditation and contemplation. The full illustrated account would be a research document of the theories I am embedding within my project, exploring design through a lens of the emotional engineering within liminality and hyperreality. I can also produce an interactive simulation of my own design interventions, as I believe these will greatly help in conveying the atmosphere I intend to capture. As with my research, the construction of the interactive experience would be fully documented and illustrated